I'm not a Canadian, I'm not an American. I'm a citizen, I'm a Haudenosaunee citizen of the Kanien'kehá:ka. So I'm a Mohawk. My nation is Mohawk, and I belong to the Haudenosaunee, which is the Iroquois Confederacy. But being Mohawk and being Haudenosaunee are not the same thing. We're born Mohawks, we belong to the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, but not all the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte are Haudenosaunee, because they're not all traditional people. All traditional people will identify as Haudenosaunee and will carry this same attitude, that they are not Canadian or American, they are Haudenosaunee. People who are not Longhost don't necessarily believe that way. But there are a lot of our people who have dual citizenship because they may have been born on the American side. But our band membership, which again is a Canadian thing, is on the Canadian side. So that happened to me and my younger sister, because we were both born in New York State, but we've lived here for over 50 years. So I had an opportunity to travel to Australia, and I have a Haudenosaunee passport because we have our own passports, but the Australian government wouldn't accept it. They wouldn't give me traveling documents based on my Haudenosaunee passport, so they said, get a Canadian passport or an American passport and we'll let you into the country. I said, I'm not a Canadian, I'm not an American, I'm Haudenosaunee, this is who I am. So I gave up that trip to Australia because they wouldn't let me into the country. And it was to go to and attend a World Indigenous Peoples Education Conference. How ironic is that? And then I had to get an American passport. They wouldn't let me have a Canadian passport, even though I've lived here all these years, because I was born over there. And then when I went over across the border to get the passport, the people at American Customs said, why are you doing this? Why aren't you getting a Canadian passport? And I said, they won't let me have a Canadian passport. That's crazy. And they're going on. But both of my sons have been born in Canada. And my sister's daughters have been born in Canada. So I'm like, what if anything happened, like national something, and you had to go to your whatever, they'd look at your passport to see where you belong, and I'd be separated from my children. So that was kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm. What's the relationship like between people who live here and people from off reserve?
It's the whole gamut. I mean, in my experience, towns closest to reserve communities have the most people who clash racially. But there's also a lot of support. There's a lot of like-mindedness, and there's a lot of people who support each other. And there's a lot of intermarriage, Deseronto is the town. It's not currently part of the reserve, although it used to be. There's a lot of non-native people there. But there's also a lot of mixed marriages, and there's a lot of people who have Mohawk ancestry who live in that town. There's also a lot of people in that town who hate Indians, and they're close to here, so we get everything from soup to nuts. You'll find supporters and those who are not so supportive everywhere you go. I think for the most part, we've cultivated pretty good relationships with our neighbors here. It's just when there's been political upheaval, like when the railroad gets blocked, or when the highway gets blocked, or the bridge gets blocked, then people get very heated on both sides, There's people who are non-native, who are town people, who are upset because they're inconvenienced and they don't understand what's going on. There's people from the community here who sometimes don't understand what the issues are too, and they'll be upset because those young upstarts are doing stuff like that too, right? And then there's other people from town who will come and stand with the people at the barricades in support. So I think it's very difficult and dangerous to kind of paint the situation with one brush, because I think there's just so much. What I tell people is, if you want to help people, you go and ask them, what can I do? How can I be a supporter? How can I be an ally? Because that's what you are, right? That's what you would be coming as. I'm not going to turn you into a Mohawk, but there's very few Mohawks in the grand scheme of things. We're not enough to make a political impact. So we don't have a significant enough population to change popular attitude. So we do need allies, and we need supporters, and we need people who are going to do things like that. Be supportive, learn about the local culture, learn about the local history, listen more than you speak, lobby politicians on the behalf of the rights and treaties of Aboriginal people or whatever. There's all kinds of really good ideas. So those are some things to think about. But what I always say is to go to the people and ask, you know. There are a lot of people who will let you know how you can be helpful and maybe what they need help with.